Hi, class. I wanted to apologize first of all for the technical difficulties that we had last week in class that prevented us from seeing Chapter 8. So, as a makeup or an altering to our current schedule, we're going to do a lecture overview of Chapter number 5 and Chapter number 8 for this week, and you will be responsible in class to take the exam. So I'm going to go over the topics of Chapter 5 and what I expect and what I need you to study and know for the in-class exam, or sorry, quiz that we're going to have to cover those chapters. So Chapter 5 basically was focused on nutrition and the importance of growth and development. I want you to know the two issues to not getting enough nutrition for an infant. Number one, the infant has a small stomach, and number two, the infant has a small digestive system. That will be on the exam. This is important here. In the first year, infants are expected to triple their birth weight and increase their length by about 50%. Under energy requirements, demand and individualized combination, basically the energy requirements of any living being, human at least, are carbohydrates, proteins, minerals, and vitamins. This will be on the exam of the quiz. Breastfeeding, no general information about breastfeeding. Maybe tell me what the postpartum period is. That's something that I would probably ask. There are advantages to formula breastfeeding. The father can feed the baby and bond with the baby. Family and friends can feed the baby and bond with the baby. Some formulas contain more protein than breast milk, and there's fully balanced nutrition. For some reason, there's a number 5 on there. I don't know why. It's gone down. Know that for your exam. A lot of this is common sense if you just stop and think about people in your family and things that you've experienced yourself just by knowing or being around people that have had children around them. Those are just basic concepts that I want you to kind of just understand overall. So again, we'll recap for the first section. Know that the birth weight can increase by about 50%. I want you to know this section. I want you to know this section. Generalization of breastfeeding and postpartum depression, or the postpartum period. What is the advantage of breastfeeding? I'm not going to ask you anything about introducing solid foods. I want you to understand that, of course, but that's not our focus. On the brain. A healthy brain. The things that I want you to focus on knowing are this. Frontal lobe, parental lobe, occipital lobe, temporal lobe, and make sure those 4 areas in here as part of a healthy brain. This section here. Now, of course, there's cerebellum and brainstem as well. I don't think I'm going to pull questions from those two. The cerebellum, I may not. Be prepared either way, but I mean, it's basically the cerebellum is for your balance. So if you know that, not a problem. And of course, your brainstem is for breathing, your heart rate, your level of consciousness. So maybe I should include that, so I probably will then. But just remember that your cerebellum, if it's damaged, will affect your balance. And a lot of people that have issues with balance and whatnot have had brain injuries that have damaged that area. And again, this is a healthy brain. These are what healthy brain and injured brain is on this side, but it's pretty much the opposite. So it would be for the cerebellum, you have difficulty walking, tremors, dizziness. So I'm focusing on the word cerebellum because balance, I think it's just going to be something that you're going to hear me say once and you'll remember. So brainstem is just basic functions. I want you to know temporal lobe is for speech. Occipital lobe is for your vision. Parental lobe is for the sense of touch, pain, and temperature. And the frontal lobe is for your personality, emotions, your intelligence, your judgment abilities. So it kind of lets you know where on the brain, if you have a head injury or you're damaged or you're hitting a certain side of your head, doctors can see, okay, there's bruising in this area. They'll watch and see if you have any issues with, for example, if you've been hit in the temporal lobe, possible question, hint, hint, um, what would that affect? It would affect your speech. So if someone, let's say you had a traumatic brain injuries, you were in a car accident, and you hit your temporal lobe, what would the doctors watch for? They watch for your speech patterns, whether or not you slurred your speech, if you had any issues with communication, delayed reactions, stuff like that. Well, delayed reactions might be a little bit more with your emotions, your attention, your concentration, so your frontal lobe. But I'll be more specific with my questions, but just have a basic understanding of these concepts. I am not going to get you, I'm not going to do the classic, here's a picture of the brain, tell me what it is, blah, blah, blah. I'd rather you know what those things are. So please know those for the exam. No, by the age of 6 months, most youngsters can balance their heads quite well. Um, that's important because a lot of people don't realize that children can do that at 6 months. Locomotion and crawling begin, standing and walking begin at a later time, but we're not going to cover that on this exam because we're covering 2 chapters at once, so I'm not pulling everything from it. So, but again, read through it again and understand it. There are 3 types of failure to thrive. This is important, and this will be on your exam. Organic, non-organic, actually 2, not 3, I apologize. Organic accounts for 30% of all failure to thrive cases, and the problem is usually gastrointestinal disease, occasionally a problem with the nervous system issues. Non-organic, this is much more difficult to diagnose and to treat. It's lack of physical symptoms. They look at environmental issues, toxicity in your water supply, maybe poverty, neglect, abuse, shaken syndrome. All those things kind of encompass everything that isn't organic. So a child that is not thriving well, that it's based on strictly on the fact that they have some kind of intestinal issue, some kind of biological issue, it's going to be organic, and non-organic are all the other elements that encompass anything that could make this child not well. So just remember those 2 things. This what I meant by the 3 things is the third thing I want you to know is the seriousness of how serious this is. Almost 50% of these infants will continue to experience physical, cognitive, and behavior problems, even if they're able to thrive, based on either physical issues or environmental issues. So I'll give an example. Non-organic. Let's say the student, or the child, not student, has been exposed to poverty. Their parents aren't really good at caring for the child. They neglect the child. The child gets beaten a lot. He doesn't thrive very well. Half of the children that go through that will continue to not have good birth weight. Will have issues with eating disorders as they get older. Will have physical illnesses based on the fact that they're not thriving very well. Their bodies are not processing the right vitamins and minerals that they need for their body. So look at it in terms of organic, non-organic, but remember, half, cut it right down the middle, we'll still have problems later on. Okay? Oops. All right, there we go. How to prevent sleeping disorders. This is important. I want you to know this. Place infants on their backs on a firm mattress that meets current safety standards. Remove all pillows, quilts, and comforters, and any other soft toys from the crib. If using a blanket, tuck it around the mattress and be sure it reaches only to the baby's chest. If you just stop and look at this, not as a list, but as something that you would do as a parent, close your eyes, picture the crib. What would you do when you had your own child? Put the child on their backs, current safety standards. Remove the pillows, anything around where the baby can, and toys that the baby can get hurt. And if you use a blanket, you tuck it around the mattress to be sure it reaches only to the baby's chest. So use a mental visual aid when remembering this, and you don't have to remember 1, 2, 3. You just remember, okay, those are some common sense things that I want to learn if I'm going to take care of a baby to make sure they're okay. I think that's all we're going to cover. You covered a lot of it in your discussion board post, the main topics, but that's what I'm going to cover on your exam. for Chapter 5 or your quiz for Chapter 5. So that'll give you a good overview, and I hope that helps. And I am now going to do your video on Chapter 8, so you'll have that ready as well.